So I was asked to talk about um, Andrew Tate and give my thoughts on him. And he is somebody that I have intentionally ignored for a very long time and have in I first heard about him. I watched the first of Todd Grande's commentaries on him, and I will put both of the commentaries below in the description, along with some other videos. Um, but I watched his first commentary, which was a while back, and that was all I needed to hear to know that I wanted absolutely nothing to do with Andrew Tate. When I sat down to make this video and I started going over in my head, I usually just shoot from the hip when I'm doing these comments. Uh, and sometimes I'll make notes if there's specific points I need to make sure I hit. But I just sat down and started going over in my head what all I wanted to say about Andrew Tate. And as I tried to put my thoughts together, I started getting drowsy and I had to take a nap. And that is something that started happening to me during a time in my life where I was dealing with a psychopathic manipulator, a psychopathic abuser of my own. And the reason that started happening was because for the last couple of days, as I started to formulate everything I wanted to say, I started listening to videos by Andrew Tate. And I do believe that a well-informed opinion is always best informed by going to the source rather than just listening to videos about. And because of the abuse that I have encountered in the past, I am very, very attuned to the rhythms of what people are saying and what psychopathic abusers, the rhythm of how they talk and the way that they guide the discussion and that sort of thing, because I had that done to me hundreds and hundreds of times. And what starts to happen is this. This is something I encountered. It's something that Andrew Tate very obviously does to his victims, and that is that a psychopathic abuser will engage you in a conversation that you think is they set it up so that you feel like you're entering into a discussion on equal ground of reasonable ideas of whatever the subject at hand is. You're having a discussion on equal ground, and they are genuinely interested in your opinion or genuinely want to speak with you and that sort of thing. And this is what I started to see happening when Andrew Tate would go into interviews and that sort of thing, the way he would start manipulating people and start controlling the discussion. So what would happen is he would put you in, see, and this is one of the things, if you read the book Psychopath Free, it's, I was hoping I had it in close grasp. But anyway, one of the traits of a sociopath or a psychopath is that when you are talking to them, there is a difference, but I'm not going to go into it here. They are both, however, along the same spectrum, and the criteria applies to both of them. One of the signs of a sociopath is you find yourself having conversations where you are having to explain basic concepts of right and wrong to a person as if they are a child, as if you are literally explaining obvious concepts of right and wrong to a 2-year-old. You find yourself speaking at that level. And so what I would notice is that Andrew Tate, in his interview segments, especially the ones where he would argue with people and that sort of thing, he would get them to a point where they are having to, he's essentially putting them on the spot for contradicting him about very basic child level concepts of right and wrong, ethical concepts of right and wrong. And then when he gets them explaining that to a point that they're becoming exasperated, he remains unflappable and turns up the intensity of the conversation on them at that point. At that point where they are worn down because they feel like they're having to explain basic right and wrong to the basic right and wrong you would explain to a 2-year-old to a fully grown adult, they get worn down. And the reason they get worn down is because when we interact with one another, there's a natural give and take in the affirmation that we have with one another. We speak back among non-sociopathic people. There is a natural back and forth that we have with one another, where we acknowledge a fundamental level of mutual respect between parties as we're sitting here having a discussion. And this can even be between people who are having an extremely heated discussion. There's still a mutual respect for the functionality of talking to two functional adults. And this is something that we do automatically. We don't think about it. It's just a natural part of exchange, and you really don't notice it until it's gone. But when it's not there, and you start finding yourself naturally waiting for that reciprocity of that natural validation from the other person, where you understand that whether or not you agree about this particular topic that you're having, you are nevertheless whether or not you agree about this, nevertheless there is a bedrock of common civility and common maturity and common ground behind all of it. And you start looking for that more and more. And the sociopath doesn't give you that. They make you start trying to get it more and more from them. They know that they're depriving you of this. It's difficult if you've not experienced this, if you've not had this done to you. It can be kind of difficult to understand or to fathom what I'm talking about. But they know that there is this je ne sais quoi between people, this social contract between people, and that what they do is they get you to start kind of subtextually saying, hey, I need you to give me this. I need you to give me this. I need you to give me this. And they let you do that to a certain degree. And as you do that, you become more and more frustrated again because you feel like you're talking to a 2-year-old that doesn't understand basic right and wrong. And then as you become more frustrated and they move you into a context where you are needing something basic from them and they're not giving it to you, now they have control over the situation, and then they explode at you. Then they start raising their voice at you. Then they start talking down to you. Then they start putting you in your place. And this is what happens, what I saw happening in every video I watched where Andrew Tate would be talking to other people, interviewers or anything like that. When he would be talking to other people, he would do this, and you recognize it. There's the old saying, game recognize game. This is victim of the game recognizing perpetrator of the game. And he would do this to people, and I could tell very quickly this is something I've had to be very on guard for, because I'm, as newcomers to the channel might not know, I'm on the spectrum. So when you're on the spectrum, when you're on the autism spectrum, you're uniquely vulnerable to being taken advantage of by people like this. And I had to learn that the hard way. And so, um, the, so anyway, what happens then is when you're in that place where they know that you're relying on them, then they start cracking the whip. Then they start coming down on you, and you are now, um, you are now in the position of having been corrected by them. And what happens at a subtextual level in your mind, the reason this is effective is not because they're right, not because they have any valid arguments to gain control in the situation. It's because they are so, they know that that you, as a non-sociopathic, non-psychopathic person, you operate within this world of a mutual exchange of respect and decency that we observe, that is observed even among people who staunchly disagree with each other. They know that you exist in this world of reciprocity, where there's this je ne sais quoi that you extend to people, and there's a je ne sais quoi that they extend back to you, and that this is what allows you to function with people, and that the expectation of this reciprocity is actually a structural underpinning of who you are and how you, and of yourself, of your self-worth, knowing knowing that you are a person who expects to have this extended to you and be able to give it to other people. That as a non-psychopathic person, that is a fundamental underpinning of who you are, because we are social beings that rely on kind of a mutual exchange of validation. And when they take that away from you, you have to understand a psychopath not only does not care about that validation, and not only does not have a problem not receiving that validation, but they think it's funny that you need that validation. They think it's funny that you need that exchange of that you need that exchange, that underpinning of exchange of validation, of mutual respect and common courtesy and all of that. They think it's funny that you need that. And so to them, getting you in that position where you cannot think and cannot, where they get you in that position where you start trying to explain or talk to them about things that they seem to be oddly oblivious to a point that you're just running around in a maze and you have no idea what you're trying to say at all. And then they start yelling at you. Then they get angry at you. And then they start trying to tell you what's what and all of that. That is what Andrew Tate does. And there are all of these people out there who will say, well, oh, he has all of this advice for young men that's helping them. And I've heard his little pieces of advice. Like there was one thing where he's saying, don't say I have to go to work, say I get to go to work, that sort of thing. Not one of these little platitudes that he espouses is an original thought. Every single one of these things is taken from somewhere else. The idea is this is a little piece of wisdom that he's bestowing upon you. Now that he's broken you down, he's going to give you this little piece of insight, this little piece of helpful sounding wisdom. He's just going to put a new clever spin on the way you see the world, and you think, oh, this guy really does have something to offer, and that sort of thing. That's by design. That is what Andrew Tate is doing, and he knows he's doing it. And I bring all of that up because now the reason I was asked to comment on this is because he is now facing charges. I mean, I think if you're coming to my channel, you're probably not hearing about Andrew Tate for the first time. But he is facing charges of rape, of human trafficking, and of I believe rape, kidnapping, human trafficking, and a bunch of other things connected to organized crime, because he has, for all intents and purposes, essentially been running a pimping operation out of Romania. and it's been based largely around webcam models, but there are a number of women who were rescued from the home where he lived, who are now saying that they were being kept there against their will. So now, to be very clear, yes, I do believe that all people are innocent until proven guilty before the bar of law. And Andrew Tate, like all other people, should have his day in court. That I say that not out of some inherent respect for Andrew Tate. I have no respect for him. I say that out of respect for a judicial system. This is going to be in Romania, not the U.S., but even so, a judicial system that ought to serve common law and ought to err on the side of justice for all individuals. So it's only in principle that I say that. That said, that does not preclude me from having my personal opinion about the issue at hand, and I believe that Andrew Tate is guilty beyond any degree of plausible doubt whatsoever. Another thing I'm going to include in the low bar is in the description is a video by Bruce Rivers, who's a prominent law tuber, who has gone into extraordinary detail about how Andrew Tate, he does a really great video breakdown of how Andrew Tate has essentially admitted to every crime that he is now being accused of in his videos, which is probably what prompted the police to take the Romanian police to take an interest in what he was doing anyway, especially when he's on the record saying that he moved to Romania in the first place so that he could skirt the law. But that whole thing, the way that sociopaths and psychopaths control you cannot be understated. And I say that because invariably I'm going to have people coming to me and saying, but Jordan, those women went to work for him out of their own free will. That's consent. That's why they do that. Okay. Just, again, me having to break this down for you and explain it to you like you're a child who doesn't understand it, you defending Andrew Tate in this manner is by design. His whole thing is set up so that you are doing the work that he doesn't even have to do. You know, you are expanding the level of control and influence he has by setting you up, putting you in a position. You've listened to what he has to say. He's manipulated you subtextually so that you will go out and manipulate people the same way that he always has without even realizing that that's what you're doing. Yes, people can get suckered into things. So women may have gone to work for Andrew Tate consensually and then found themselves in a position where they can't get out. And think about it, there is a really fascinating Korean manga series called Killing Stalking, and it is about sociopathic control within the context of a gay relationship where one of the two people is somebody that is just morbidly fascinated by the other person, is very much a lost soul looking for a place to belong, and therefore is uniquely vulnerable to someone like the other person, the other character. And the other character in the story is a serial killer, and takes advantage of this person to draw him into his world and make him an accomplice and everything, and manipulates him as though they are having an actual relationship. And it is one of the most deeply disturbing portrayals of sociopathic control that you will ever encounter in media. I've watched some videos that summarize the entire series of Killing Stalking, and then I tried to read it myself, and it was too disturbing to get through. I'd like to get through it at some point. I'd like to read the whole thing, but it was too disturbing to get through, and it's very well drawn too. So the full depth of the horror is very, very much on display. But anyway, there's a scene in Killing Stalking where this the abused victim. I'm not good at remembering names and in books and everything, and I can't remember. One of the two characters is named Songwoo, and I can't remember the other character's name, and I don't want to incorrectly apply the name Songwoo to the wrong character. So anyway, the abuser character, the psychopathic character, at one point takes the other character with him to the shopping mall, and they go in the shopping mall, and the abuser leaves his victim alone in this man that he's been stringing along under the guise of a relationship. He leaves him alone in the store, in a store in the shopping mall for an extended period of time, and the question, and he's left alone for hours, and comes back and gets him and takes him with him. And the question that the guy is asking himself, the victim is asking himself, and the question that we as the audience are meant to ask ourselves, is, he's totally free. He could run free. He could escape right now. He could go to mall security. He could go find a police officer. He could get free of this person now. He's not, this guy's not breathing down his neck. Why is he not doing anything? And the reason he's not breaking free is because that part of his mind, that part of his thought process that would allow him to go down that road has been completely destroyed, completely taken away. And I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be abused by someone like that. And to not be able to get away, to know that you should get away and know that you have the opportunity to get away, but finding yourself completely unable to do it. That is what psychopathic abusers do. And like I said, this is very much, Andrew Tate checks off all of the boxes for this kind of person. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that Andrew Tate is guilty of the crimes of which he is accused. My larger thoughts about the situation are that Andrew Tate is the most recent manifestation of the manosphere, and that the manosphere is something that I've spoken out against extensively because I've seen how horrible it can be. And what scares me is not Andrew Tate himself so much as wondering what's going to come next. Because all of this whole thing that we now call the manosphere is one cretinous sociopathic swindler after another trying to top the last guy. First, we had the eccentric but relatively, actually go back into the 90s when the so-called pickup movement was taking off, and you had toxic manipulators like Ross Jeffries trying to teach other people how to ply their trade. And if, by the way, you've studied Ross Jeffries' techniques and can't seem to understand why he's able to seduce women with these techniques, but not you, it's because you are not a psychopath. You have that natural give and take, that fundamental underlying give and take that allows you, that gives you a fundamental degree of respect for your fellow man and woman, but your fellow human beings. And as such, you're not able to take advantage of people with these techniques. You simply have a system that cannot run that software. Anyway, but it started with toxic people like Ross Jeffries. It expanded with the more eccentric but relatively benign antics of mystery and the mystery method and all of his cretinous cohorts. And then it expanded further with people like Roosh V, and this is where the manosphere started taking on these ominous right-wing tones and everything like that. And suddenly Roosh V was writing articles about calling for the enslavement of women, calling for the legalization of rape and all of this. And I know you're going to rush in and say, those were all satire. No, he did not start saying those things were satire until after he started getting a horrible degree of PR blowback. Until after he induced a horrible public relations nightmare. Anyway, so you have that, and it just keeps escalating, and these guys get more and more disturbing and more cretinous and more outright, openly sociopathic in their views. And finally, now we have Andrew Tate, who has allegedly, although I don't think allegedly, but I'm obligated to say allegedly for legal reasons, who is alleged now to have been operating a human trafficking ring and to have been kidnapping people and to have been raping people, and is now facing, is not just being accused of these things on the internet, but is now seriously facing down these charges. Now you seriously have these a person who is actually the very horrifying reality of the manosphere, of what people were afraid the manosphere was, brought into reality. So what really scares me is the question of what's next. What is next? Who is the guy that's going to come along and top Andrew Tate? Do we need? Is it going to take? Is it going to be? I mean, is it going to be Is it going to be an actual Patrick Bateman or an actual Hannibal Lecter? I mean, how far is it going to go with these guys topping each other before the world finally says enough is enough? And so what is my response to that? I think that the thing is, there has been so much tremendous public outcry against the manosphere and against the toxic internet subcultures that give rise to these sort of people like Andrew Tate. But we need to start realizing the problem is that there's this default public reaction to lump Andrew Tate and the people who have been suckered by Andrew Tate, young men who have been suckered by Andrew Tate, into the same basket, into thinking that that Andrew Tate must be preaching to some sort of army of sociopaths that are learning how to refine their trade, refine their abilities and be better sociopaths or something like that. No, what he's doing is he's taking advantage of people that are very naive, very confused, having a lot of their own problems in life and that sort of thing. He's taking advantage of people and getting and manipulating them. When I say people, he's taking advantage of young men the same way he's taking advantage of young women. And we need to start talking about people like Andrew Tate not as leaders of a movement of, like I said, like he's raising some kind of psychopath army or something like that. Not that. We need to start talking about people like Andrew Tate as a public health crisis. We need to think about sociopathy and psychopathy as public health issues. That these people literally are a sociological disease. And when I say that, now that needs to come again with, I need to screech the brakes for a minute and say, we are talking about a mental health epidemic. I'm not saying that very clearly, very carefully, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that human being, any particular human being individually is a disease, or that any group of people ought to be thought of collectively as a disease. I'm saying we have a mental health epidemic that is running rampant, and that mental health epidemic is sociopathy. And There is a woman, her name is Emmy Thomas, who wrote a book called The Sociopath Next Door, where she is a clinically diagnosed psychopath, and she's done interviews and everything. Her real name is out there. I can't recall what it is right now. That's beside the point. But I listened to an interview with her, and she made a point where she said psychopaths need help, and they are people who need help. And she acknowledged the irony of the fact that, yes, these are people that need help, that would think it's funny that you want to help them, would use your desire to help them as an opportunity to take advantage of you, to screw you over, and that sort of thing. But they very much, in their own way, even though they are essentially the villains of the world, they need help. And so we need to start talking about how to best corral the behavior of sociopaths and try to figure out how to get through to them that they need help. In the case of Emmy Thomas, she said that she realized she needed to start living her life a different way just because she got tired of having to reinvent her life every couple of years, of having to, skip town and restart as a different person and that sort of thing. And there has to be some way that both sociopaths and the victims, sociopaths and psychopaths and their victims and their potential victims can be dealt with in a way that will prevent future Andrew Tates from being created. And that is a real problem for the mental health community. It's another example of why I am staunchly opposed to what is now being trotted out as the affirmative care model, because there is no affirmation for a psychopath. There is no universe in which it's ethical to tell a psychopath that their behaviors and their impulses are somehow humane or just or acceptable. And I want to close on one final thing. And I'm sure two things. First of all, I'm sure people will come to me and say, "But Jordan, how can you be opposed to Andrew Tate being a pimp? Aren't you in favor of sex workers' rights?" Yes, Homestar, I am in favor of sex workers' rights. And one of the reasons that I believe in legalizing sex work and legalizing sex work, mainstreaming it, and keeping it above board, making it an above board practice, is so that sex workers do not have to deal with cretinous scumbags like Andrew Tate. And it's amazing to me that no matter how clearly I explain this, I just can't seem to pry people's tiny little fingers off the idea that I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating organized crime. And when I came out as a sex workers' rights advocate over a decade ago, when that was the main focus of my blogging efforts, I had people left, right, and center just screaming at me, accusing me of siding with the pimps and the human traffickers and all of that. No, that is the exact opposite. Just like if I said to you that prohibition of alcohol is what created organized crime in the United States, therefore organized crime, the efforts of organized crime are undercut by legalizing alcohol, you can understand that concept, and it would never occur to you. It would never occur to you to think that I was somehow in favor of in favor of supporting the mafiosos and the bootleggers and everything that were that were maintaining the criminal underground during Prohibition. You would never think that. And so it's by the same token that I say that, yes, I am a sex workers' rights advocate, not a human trafficker advocate by any stretch of the imagination. And don't gaslight me don't try to gaslight me into thinking otherwise or suggesting otherwise. The final thing I want to say is this. And up until now, I'm sure that everything that I've been saying about Andrew Tate to the left-leaning people in my audience, and I get people left and right of center because I have viewpoints that are left and right of center. But to the left-leaning people in my audience have certainly been hearing me say all of this up to this point and have no doubt been nodding along saying, ah, yes, yes, very good, very good. Well, I'm sorry, but you're going to need to you're going to need to need to run your penalty lap in all of this as well, because I want to talk about something that's been really grating on me as I have watched all of this unfold. I want to do a commentary on the upcoming Super Mario Brothers movie, because what it sounds like from I'll get more in depth in this in the actual video, but from what I've been able to glean from the trailers and the preview clips that have been released of the movie so far, this is not a movie about the Mario Brothers rescuing Princess Peach, which is the underlying story of the video games. This is a story about Princess Peach leading Mario, who is helpless and naive in this film. This is about Princess Peach leading Mario on a quest to rescue Luigi, because it is now politically incorrect to show two men going on a quest to rescue a woman. And, now, bear in mind, in Mario, Bowser is not a human man. I'm sure people want to analyze the story as if he is, for discussion's sake, a human man. He's not a human man. He's a sentient lizard that happens to be male. But anyway, we now have this narrative that, there's this expression that goes around in politically correct circles, woke circles, if you will, that in the game of patriarchy, men and women are not the other team; they're the ball. That symbolically, when Mario and Luigi fight Bowser for the princess, they are moral equals who are together perpetuating an unjust system. And I want to say, and I hate bringing this sort of thing up because I hate having to incur the wrath of the woke who want to lecture me on how I just totally don't understand it or something like that. Well, whatever the case, here's the thing. Take that line of logic and apply it to the police officers who raided Andrew Tate's mansion and rescued the women that were being trafficked in there. Are you really going to be so empty and callous as to say that the men who put themselves in the line of danger to rescue those women and restore them to their freedom as free people in a free society with individual agency, restore them to that level of control over their lives? Are you seriously going to say that those men are the moral equivalent of Andrew Tate, the man who imprisoned them, allegedly imprisoned them, allegedly raped them, allegedly trafficked them? Are you seriously, let's say for the sake of discussion that's all of that's true, so I don't have to keep saying allegedly. But anyway, are you going to say that those men who did something heroic and noble to help those women, that they are morally equivalent to Andrew Tate? That by interfering with Andrew Tate at all, they are equally participating in a system of oppression? No, that is bullshit. That is unbelievable bullshit. It is saying statements like that really get under people's skin, and the reason those observations like that, those observations might be fun when you've been duped into going off to a course of college study that's really just 4 years of mental masturbation. It might be fun to entertain ideas like that, but in the real world, no. It is the only thing you are doing. The only thing you are doing when you take that attitude is becoming an apologist, albeit indirectly, for Andrew Tate. The only thing that happens there when you try to demand that the good and the evil are indistinguishable equals, all you are doing is allowing evil to thrive. That's all that is. And I have a real problem with this because if you we taught what I said earlier about Andrew Tate, men like Andrew Tate being a public health crisis. The ability that they have to infect and control other young men is a public health crisis. And I want to say something. I am hardly some sort of radical traditionalist or anything like that, but look back at history. History has societies of the past have mitigated against men like Andrew Tate and the influence that they have by holding up societal standards for men that ennoble them. Am I saying that ennoble, is that the correct word? But call them to a standard of nobility. Call them to a standard of personal pride in who they are and how they treat other people. Think about the Knights Code during the medieval times. Prior to the codes of chivalry and that sort of thing, knights were basically just government-sanctioned thugs. They went around beating people up and taking whatever they wanted and doing whatever they wanted, basically being glorified schoolyard bullies. And the kingdoms of the world, the monarchies, realized, well, this isn't really going to work very well. And so they started instituting the codes of chivalry, the codes of behavior for knights, and started giving the knights something to aspire to greater than themselves, a standard of nobility that was greater than and more appealing than just being a bullshit asshole and kicking open doors and doing whatever you want and taking whatever you want. There is a reason that those noble standards are presented to men, because they do mitigate the natural impulses that men do have. There is a very real and very profound difference between, and I know it's not politically correct to say, but the truth usually is not politically correct. There is a very real and very profound difference between the male sex drive and the female sex drive. And that very profound difference is validated by the experiences, the ongoing documentation of the experiences of men who medically transition to present as women. And when they go on estrogen and they go on female hormones, then they stop their testosterone and they're like, oh my God, your sex drive just flatlines when you transition. Like, it's a whole different concept. And it is different. You are dealing with different chemistry. Men have have a sex drive that actively encourages them to go out and pursue sex, whereas women have a sex drive that is, or women have a drive towards sex that evolves over time. It begins before they ever feel aroused. Men feel aroused and go out and pursue sex. Women, the process of arousal begins long before sex is ever on the table. And for that reason, we are dealing with different components of different chemicals. And these codes of chivalry and these values were set up so that men would function in honorable ways and see value in being honorable. And the problem is that the woke of the world have torn down that edifice. They've decided to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, there were those same codes of behavior had a lot of ridiculous things in them that would have seemed practical 500 years ago that we never would have adopted now in our modern world. Yes, absolutely, not arguing it. But the validity of having those standards and those noble standards and those codes of behavior to aspire to, those codes of nobility to aspire to, There is a very good and very valid reason that they need that. And we want to talk about a crisis of masculinity and of toxic masculinity in the world today. Well, where do you think that toxicity is coming from? It's coming from young men not having any concept in the modern world of how to be, of any concept of a healthy masculinity that is championed and applauded by society. This is important. If you want to stop the Andrew Tates of the world, you need this, not just because you need good men to stand up against scumbags like Andrew Tate, but because you need something that will direct men away from the temptations and the iniquities offered to them by the Andrew Tates of the world. And what happened is we decided to say, or at least decided to accept the idea that the men who rescued women from Andrew Tate and Andrew Tate himself are moral equals. And we threw out the goodness and the validity of these guys, the good guys, very much at our own peril. And so we need these positive male role models. This is a real problem, and this is not, understand, what I'm saying here is not any kind of red pill bullshit at all. This is against the red pill bullshit. This is against people like Andrew Tate. This is against that problem. How do we stop that problem? And the answer is, now in modern woke society, we now treat young men as defective girls, instead of teaching them that there is goodness and righteousness and nobility in who and what they are, and that there is something positive that they can aspire to. Instead of teaching them that, we teach them that they are defective girls and tell them to, just try to observe the girls and do a non-intrusive version of what the girls are doing. And that's not good. That's not helping. And I understand that for a lot of people, it may be difficult. A lot of people, I understand, are coming from a place of trauma. And when they see an assertive man, a man with confidence, a man with pride, they may not be able to tell the difference between that and a toxic narcissist like Andrew Tate. They may not be able to tell the difference. But I'll put it to you like this. Trey Parker and Matt Stone in Team America World Police said it perfectly. In this world, there are dicks and there are pussies. And pussies hate dicks because dicks fuck pussies. But what pussies forget is that there are also assholes. And pussies can't fuck assholes, only dicks can fuck assholes. And Andrew Tate is an asshole. And if you want somebody to stand up to the Andrew Tates, it's going to have to be somebody it's going to be the guy that can come in and fuck over Andrew Tate. And those persons are the people that, the men that, and there may have been women involved in the raid too. I don't know. I don't know the genders of the people involved, but most likely men. They're the men who put their lives on the line, put themselves at risk to raid his compound and rescue those women. Those are heroic men standing up to a villainous man. And we've got to stop pretending that there's not any difference between the two, for the sake of the women that the assholes are oppressing. So yeah, there is a difference between dicks and assholes. And I understand, bringing back the South Park metaphor, the world police metaphor, I understand if you've been fucked over by the assholes very badly in your life, you may not be able to tell the difference between the dicks and the assholes. But trust me, you still need the dicks. And stepping back from the comedic, that little bit of comic relief there, or attempt at comic relief, I want to close by saying there's a young man I knew about probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point. He was about 15. And he and I would talk periodically about, this is someone that I knew through other people in my personal life. I don't want to like reveal details about friends and families that I know and that kind of thing. But anyway, this was a guy that looked up to me and would ask me for advice, kind of just general elder wisdom about like things he was going through in school and that sort of thing. And at one point he came to me and he said that he was fucking tired. He was just fucking tired of not getting anywhere with girls. And that he saw all of the douchebags and the assholes at his school getting the girls. And he said that he had decided he was going to watch what they did and start emulating that and applying it to girls because he was tired of not getting any, and it was time that he learn what was working. And I stopped and I said, no, you're not. No, you're not going to do that. You know why? Because your honor and your integrity and your nobility and the person you are, the character of the person you are, is more important, far more important than going out and chasing tail. It does not profit a man to gain heaven at the cost of his soul. And someday you're going to be an old fuck like me, and you're going to look back on the life you led, and you're going to understand the wisdom of the statement, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. Because how you conducted yourself and the person you are is going to matter to you. And that's going to matter a lot. Trust me when I say that's going to matter a lot more to you than all of the pussy you got as a young man. And he took that seriously. He took that to heart. And that's the message. And you do not try to look me in the eye and tell me that what I said there was part of some kind of toxic tableau of masculinity. No, do not gaslight me with that bullshit. You know as well as I do that that was exactly what he needed to hear. And that is exactly what a lot more young men need to hear. And they need a lot more positive role models, positive male role models getting that message across to them. Because if they don't have that, they are going to be drawn instantly. Just like that young man almost was, they are going to be drawn instantly into the welcoming embrace of the Andrew Tates of the world. And that is the real problem. So this video went on longer than I thought it would, but I'm glad I was able to get my thought process rolling again and say everything I wanted to say. I am not interested, if you are an Andrew Tate supporter, I am not interested in arguing with you. You are wrong. You are going to keep being wrong. Understand that my heart goes out to you because I know that you have been misled and you have been tangentially abused by his nonsense and tangentially manipulated by his nonsense, but I'm not going to argue the points with you. I'm not going to argue anything he has to say with you. Not going to argue it at all. So just don't even try, and if you press me on the matter, I'll be more than happy to block you. But those are my thoughts on Andrew Tate. Like I said, my initial answer to the question, what do you think about Andrew Tate, is I don't. And now that I've said all that I have to say and all that needs to be said, I'm going to go back to thinking that about Andrew Tate. Take care.